The old man selling it almost apologized. "I know it's ugly," he said, wiping dust off the chipped ceramic surface. $5. Emma hadn't even planned to stop at the flea market that morning. It was one of those spontaneous Sunday decisions. She'd moved into a small apartment in Chicago after a messy divorce, and wandering through rows of forgotten objects somehow felt quieter than thinking. Broken lamps, warped picture frames, tools with missing parts, boxes of vinyl records nobody remembered buying. And then she saw it. A small vase, kind of squat, not the elegant shape people usually imagine when they hear antique. Pale cream base, blue patterns like waves and clouds. The glaze looked different from modern ceramics, softer, almost matte, like it had absorbed time. "It's probably junk," the seller shrugged. "Came from a storage locker. People want jewelry, not that." Emma picked it up. It was heavier than it should be. Not just solid heavy, more like "there's a reason for this" heavy. She turned it in her hands. Near the bottom, under a bit of grime, she noticed faint markings. Not a brand, not a stamp she recognized. Still, it looked a little too precise to be random. The seller watched her, bored, like he'd already decided she wouldn't buy it. Emma almost put it back, but the feeling didn't leave. That tiny itch in the brain, the one that says, this is either nothing or it's something you'll regret ignoring. She paid $5. On the way home, she kept glancing at the passenger seat like the vase could change shape when she wasn't looking. That night, she cleaned it gently with a soft cloth. No soap, no scrubbing. The patterns came alive a bit, and the glaze looked even older up close. She set it on her kitchen table, took a few photos with her phone, then sat there staring at them, mostly out of curiosity, mostly out of boredom, mostly because the weight of it still felt wrong. She opened ChatGPT and typed, "Help me identify this. Ceramic vase, blue and white patterns. Any idea what it is?" She attached the clearest photo, including the bottom mark. For a second, the loading icon spun, and Emma whispered to herself, half joking, "Okay, surprise me." Then the answer appeared, and her smile faded so fast it felt like someone had turned the air cold in her apartment. The response wasn't dramatic. It wasn't screaming in capital letters. It was calm, analytical, and that's what made it terrifying. Based on visible characteristics, this object resembles late 18th century Qing Dynasty porcelain, possibly from the Qianlong period. The cobalt underglaze and base markings suggest imperial kiln production. Recommend professional authentication. Emma stared at the screen. Qing Dynasty, 18th century, imperial. She actually laughed. "Right," she muttered, "and I just found the crown jewels next to a box of VHS tapes." But something in her chest tightened. She zoomed into the photo of the base, 6 small characters in faded blue. She didn't read Chinese, but she could see the symmetry, the balance. It didn't look sloppy. It didn't look mass-produced. She typed again. "Are there fakes like this?" The answer came quickly. Yes. However, common reproductions often have brighter glaze, inconsistent brushwork, and modern kiln marks. The patina and wear visible in your image appear consistent with age. Professional evaluation is essential. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. What would something like this be worth if authentic? This time the pause felt longer. Comparable Qing Dynasty imperial porcelain have sold at auction between $1 million and $15 million, depending on condition and rarity. Emma felt the room tilt. She read the number again. Up to $15 million. Her mind did something strange. It didn't jump to mansions or yachts. It jumped to her divorce lawyer, to the small apartment, to the fact that she'd spent the last 3 months calculating grocery totals in her head. She looked at the vase on the table. It looked exactly the same as before. Ordinary, quiet, like it didn't know what it might be. Her heart started racing. This had to be absurd. So she tested it. She uploaded the same photo to 2 different online antique forums. She searched auction databases. She even compared brushstroke details side by side with images from museum archives. The similarities were uncomfortable. The color of the cobalt, slightly muted, the subtle crackling in the glaze, the proportions of the rim. And then she found something that made her breath stop. A nearly identical vase, sold 5 years ago in Hong Kong. Hammer price, $9.8 million. Emma pushed back from the table. This wasn't curiosity anymore. This was risk. If it was fake, she was chasing a fantasy. If it was real, she looked at her phone again. One more question. What's the first step to authenticate something like this safely? The answer was practical. Contact a major auction house or certified Asian art specialist. Do not publicize widely. Secure the item. Secure the item. Emma looked around her tiny apartment. Her front door felt thin. Her windows felt fragile. The $5 vase on her kitchen table no longer felt like decor. It felt like a secret. And secrets that valuable rarely stay quiet for long. Emma didn't sleep that night. She wrapped the vase in 2 sweaters, placed it inside a shoebox, then slid it into the back of her closet under a pile of winter coats. It felt ridiculous and at the same time painfully necessary. By morning, she'd already made a decision. If this was a fantasy, she would end it quickly. If it was real, she needed professionals. She chose one of the biggest auction houses in the world, Sotheby's. Her voice shook slightly when she called. "I might have something," she said carefully, "possibly Qing Dynasty porcelain." There was a pause on the other end, not dismissive, not amused, measured. "Could you send detailed photographs of the base, rim, interior, and any visible wear?" She had already taken them. Within 2 hours, she received a reply. Short, polite, and different in tone. "We recommend bringing the object in for in-person evaluation at your earliest convenience. No emojis, no casual phrasing, no probably a reproduction." Her hands went cold. 2 days later, she walked into the marble lobby carrying what looked like an ordinary tote bag. She felt absurdly exposed. The specialist who greeted her didn't smile much. He wore gloves before even touching the wrapping. He unwrapped it slowly, turned it under soft white lights, examined the base mark with a magnifier. The room stayed quiet, too quiet. Then he said something that made her heart slam against her ribs. "This is either one of the most sophisticated forgeries I've ever seen, or it's extraordinary." They took it for further testing: thermoluminescence analysis, pigment examination, glaze composition. Emma went home and waited. 4 days, then 5. On the 6th day, her phone rang. She almost didn't answer. "Miss Carter," the specialist said. "Yes." There was a subtle change in his voice, controlled excitement. "Preliminary results strongly support late 18th century origin. We are confident this piece was produced in the imperial kilns during the Qianlong period." Emma closed her eyes. The words felt unreal. Imperial kilns, imperial king, authentic. "And based on condition and rarity, we would estimate auction results in the range of $10 to $12 million. $10 10 to 12 million for $5. Her mind went blank. She thought about the flea market, the bored cellar, the storage locker. Somewhere in that chain of events, history had slipped through someone's fingers and landed in hers. "We would recommend discretion," the specialist added. "These discoveries attract attention." Attention. That word settled differently because she had already posted one thing online, a single image, on an antique forum, before she knew what she was holding, and now the replies were multiplying. By the time Emma opened the antique forum again, her inbox was flooded. Private messages. "Where did you find this? I represent a private collector. Are you willing to sell directly?" Some were polite. Some were aggressive. A few felt predatory. One message stood out. It wasn't an offer. It was a warning. "If this is authentic, you should be careful. Imperial Qing pieces have a complicated ownership history." Her pulse quickened. Complicated how? She forwarded the message to the specialist at Sotheby's. The response came quickly. "There is no known claim associated with this form. Provenance gaps are common for pieces that left China in the 19th century. We will handle all legal due diligence." Due diligence. Emma realized something. The vase no longer belonged to her living room. It belonged to history, and history attracts power. 3 weeks later, the catalog went live. Lot 142, exceptional imperial blue and white vase, Qing period. Estimated $8 to $12 million. The photos were breathtaking. Under professional lighting, the cobalt seemed to glow. The brushwork looked deliberate, controlled, almost royal. Emma watched the preview event from a corner of the showroom. Collectors leaned closer, whispers, phones raised. She overheard one man say, "Where has this been hiding?" "In a shoebox," she almost answered. Auction night felt surreal. The room buzzed with restrained hunger, wealth in tailored suits, representatives from Hong Kong, London, New York. The auction opened at $5 million. Her stomach dropped. 6, 7. The increments climbed faster than she could breathe. 8 million, 9, 9.5. A paddle lifted in the second row. 10 million. The air shifted. 2 bidders remained, a phone representative speaking softly into a headset, and a woman in emerald silk seated near the front. 10.5. 11. Silence. The auctioneer scanned the room. The woman in emerald raised her paddle one last time. $11 million. The gavel hovered. Her heart pounded in her ears. Fair warning. A beat. Sold. The sound of the gavel echoed like a gunshot. $11 million for a $5 vase. Applause broke out. Controlled, polite, but real. Emma didn't clap. She just sat there, stunned. Later, after fees and taxes were explained, after contracts were signed, after the adrenaline drained from her body, she stepped outside into the cold night air. Chicago looked the same. Traffic lights blinked, cars passed. A street musician played saxophone on the corner. Nothing in the world had visibly changed, except everything had. Her phone buzzed. A notification from her bank confirming the first transfer installment. She stared at the number for a long time. It didn't feel like winning the lottery. It felt like being chosen by accident. Back in her apartment, the kitchen table was empty. No vase, no secret, just quiet. She opened her phone again and looked at the very first ChatGPT message that started it all. One simple identification, one suggestion to authenticate. Technology hadn't created the treasure, but it had helped her see it. Emma smiled. Next Sunday, she walked back into the flea market, not because she expected another miracle, but because now she understood something powerful. History doesn't disappear, it waits. And sometimes it's sitting under a folding table priced at $5, waiting for someone curious enough to ask the right question.